Chapter 4209. The first is more. Many of the ultimate masters looked at the glittering word blood sword on the stone monument, only to feel a chill straight from the backbone to the top of their heads, and they trembled, and never dared to speak wildly. The blood sword hasn't stopped yet. I'm afraid the goal is to go to the number one lord of the first city. The former master who broke the truth before that, said to himself. The rules of the Shinkong ancient road are not that you must go to the front of the first city to be able to challenge the second city. If you want to, even if you are the last one in the first city, you can directly challenge the second city. People. For example, the main body of the first city is dominated by the skeleton. As the first person ranked first in the first city, it is natural that it is possible to break into the second city or even the third city. However, instead of doing the crane tail in the second and third cities, it is better for him to be the city owner in the first city. On the streets in the first city, Jian Wushuang's expression was calm and he walked slowly. The Wu-crying Excalibur, obliquely attached to his waist, has not been sheathed from beginning to end. For Jian Wushuang, these ultimate dominators are enough to crush when he is dominated by the fourth level, not to mention he now breaks through the fifth after level domination. No one was able to take his move. 510th place. 430th place. 219th place. 3rd place. The speed of the sword is unparalleled, and without a pause, it rises to the 3rd position in just half a day. At this moment, not only the people outside the city began to pay attention to the ranking of Jian Wushuang. Even those in the first city who were defeated by Jian Wushuang went to the streets, followed behind Jian Wushuang, and said nothing. Row. At the beginning, there was only one person behind Jian Wushuang. With more and more people defeated by Jian Wushuang, the ranking is getting higher and higher. Gradually, the number of people following Jian Wushuang has become black with the speed visible to the naked eye. They followed behind Jian Wushuang far away, looking at Jian Wushuang's back, full of awe. Among them, many of them saw Jian Wushuang only at the 5th level and despised the mockers, but now, they have been completely convinced by Jian Wushuang's strength and awe. Alas! In countless eyes, Jian Wushuang took the wooden sign of the second palace and knocked on the door of the second palace. After a short while, a young man in white clothing, a machete in italics, with a cold face, walked out of the temple. The first city, the second place, Muchong Shenzhen. The first city of Shinggong Ancient Road, the ranking on that stele often changes. After all, everyone is the ultimate dominator, and the particularly strong has already taken the lead. Therefore, the remaining ultimate dominators, in fact, there is not much difference in strength, and the ranking is often transformation has also become a regular occurrence. But in these thousands of years, the names of only two people have never changed from start to finish. The two men are the bone marrows who occupy the top and second positions of the list, and they worship the monarch. It is said that Mu Chongshan has amazing talents. From the beginning of his practice to the ultimate master, it only took a few chaotic times. It may not be comparable to those gods and suns in the universe, but it is placed in the level of ordinary ultimate masters. Can be counted as one of the best. In these thousands of years, Muchong Shenzhen has firmly occupied the second place since he entered the ancient road to the sky, and has never changed. I don't know the blood sword, this time I can still continue the previous sturdy record and defeat the Mu Chongshan. Mu Chongshan is the pride of heaven in our first city. I don't know how many people have been defeated in the hands of Mu Chongshan. Although this blood sword shows great strength, can it be the opponent of Mu Chongshan? It's really unknown. Yes, Mu Chong has not shot for nearly thousands of years. No one knows where the strength has reached now. Outside the city gate, many of the ultimate dominators looked at the stele and talked. If someone said to them before that there is a 5th level master who can be promoted from the last one to the 3rd position in the first city, they will definitely sniff and treat it as a joke. But now, the fact of iron strikes is in front of them. They have no match for the sword in their hearts, and they have long lost their contempt. However, it took tens of thousands of years for Mu Chongshan to build up the prestige, so that they were more inclined to believe that Mu Chongshan would win. At the same time, a fierce discussion broke out in the first city. Muchong Shenzhen is very strong, but the strength of the blood sword cannot be underestimated. You must know that the blood sword came here, but only one finger from the beginning to the end. This match, I bet the blood sword will win. Anyway, there was a good show this time. Compared with people outside the city, the people inside the city know the horror of Jian Wushuang more intuitively. The outsiders only saw Jian Wushuang's ranking soar, but they did not see that Jian Wushuang's defeated enemy had only shown one finger from start to finish. In the sound of the discussion, Mu Chongshan stepped out of the temple step by step. He ignored the discussions of the crowd, but looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, and frowned. The 5th grade master? Wu Jianzhuang's expression was calm. After such questions, he had heard it no less than 100 times after entering the ancient sky. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded calmly. It's interesting. Mu Chongshan smiled slightly and continued, it's not easy to walk here with the 5th level cultivation if you want to be talented. It's not as good as me, not much worse than me. Let us go. I'll give you a chance. Cultivate yourself to the ultimate level, and then come and fight with me. After he said that, Mu Chongshan planned to return to the temple. He was quite interested. For thousands of years, someone finally came to him and shot at him. As soon as the result came out, what he saw was only a 5th-ranked dominator, and he just felt that it meant nothing. He became famous in his youth and always has high arrogance. In his opinion, even if he is not fighting with him, he is not the emperor of the divine kingdom, the son of the Holy Land, but anyway, he must be the ultimate master of the top level, right? What's the matter of a 5th-ranked dominion in Chotsu district? Seeing the ultimate master of this scene, many shook his head when he saw the situation. Mu Chongshan is still no one in his eyes. It seems that in the past thousands of years, the pride of Mu Chongshan has come to the point of conceit. Look at me, this blood sword is coming at the right time. This is the first city of the ancient sky. It is time to reshuffle. They whispered and discussed. And Sword Wushuang squinted his eyes, a quirky look on his face. Chapter 42:10. The second is even more. This is his first encounter. Someone said to him, your talent is not as good as me, even if it is the same perfect soul level. Zhu Jiawang, in terms of talent, facing Jian Wushuang is inferior to himself. Wu Jianshuang does not sound angry, but feels a bit fresh. Looks, are you finally meeting a strong man? Yang Jianhua's eyes flickered, and finally there was a sense of war. On this journey, the opponents he met almost let him have no interest in fighting, and his hands were itching to the extreme. Suddenly, although the person in front of him didn't look very strong, listening to him should be a person who was very confident in his combat ability. Cowardly and confident often comes from affirming one's own strength. In other words, he is strong. It seems that you can't deal with it at will. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. The next moment, Wu Wei's divine sword appeared instantly in Jian Wushu's hands. Jian Wushuang looked at Mu Chongshan, his eyes flickered with war, and he said, Mu Chongshan, let's fight. Okay. Mu Chongshan stepped in a footstep, turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang, and raised his eyebrows. Are you sure? Okay. Sword Wushuang opened. Also, I hope this battle will not leave you with a shadow of fear. Mu Chongshan sighed and shook his head again, as if he was sorry for the sword unparalleled. Immediately, he lifted the cold moon scimitar, and when he stepped on it, he suddenly turned into an afterimage and split towards the sword. 9 ways cut. Mu Chongshan drank. Suddenly, the cold moon scimitar in his hand cut out a cold moon sword mang, and after shooting from the machete, the cold moon sword man was divided into 9 in an instant, and at the same time turned into 900 feet Daomang, folded from the void, split like lightning. A sharp force of divine power and the laws of the universe covered this sword, which seemed extremely powerful and mysterious, giving people a sense of dazzling and unrivaled. 9 road slash. This is the mastery of Mu Chongshan. These 9 cuts are far more simple than being divided into 9. The 9 cuts are just like the tide of high tide. One cut is stronger than the other. The whole 9 cuts are enough to instantly kill an ordinary ultimate master. Behind Wu Jian's body, many of the ultimate masters fixed their eyes and said, and sword unparalleled, but frowned slightly. The divine power fluctuations uploaded by these 9 Daomangs appear to Jian Wushuang, although they are a lot stronger than the ultimate masters he encountered before. But it is only limited to this. It seems that's it. Jian Wushuang felt the fluctuation of the divine power on these 9 swords, and his brows could not help wrinkling and tightening. No, there must be something wrong. This person is so confident that he can't be so weak. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, then clenched the Wu Cry Excalibur in his hand, and exploded into 20% of the divine power in his body. Da Daomang beheaded. This is the first time that Sword Wushuang used the sword after breaking through the 5th rank domination. This sword, although it has only 20% of the magic power of Jian Wushuang, but the burst of power is more powerful than the full blow of Jian Wushuang when the 4th level dominated. Rumble. Suddenly, the world was eclipsed, and a scarlet swordman was cut out like a big python swallowing the sun. At this place of the sword, as if the same stone stirred up 1,000 layers of waves, the whole house was shock. It is impossible to use any words to describe the horror in the eyes of everyone after seeing this sword. At this moment, the entire first city shuddered at it. The scarlet sword horn shattered countless air machines directly. Carry the power of destroying the heavens and the earth, and chop down towards Mu Chong God. It was almost the moment that this scarlet swordman collided with the 9 moonblades of Mu Chongshan, and the 9 moonblades were shattered one after another. And this scarlet Jianmang, only after the light dimmed a little, then cut it again towards Mu Chongshan Jun. This. Shi Mu Chongshen's face changed suddenly, and he could no longer maintain the indifference and confidence on his face. He looked at the sword that was cut from the sky with the power of destruction, and his mouth began to tremble. How could it be so strong? At this moment, not only the face of Mu Chongshan changed greatly, but many of the ultimate masters who followed behind Jian Wushuang were astonished and took a breath. They expected that Jian Wushuang would be strong before, but did not expect it, but when Jian Wushuang actually shot, they would be so powerful. Break me. At that moment, the face of Junjun Yi of Chongshan was flushed with a shouting expression. Suddenly, several pieces of defensive rules were treasured. They were taken out by Mu Chongshan backhand, blocking this sharp sword. This is not enough. Mu Chong is biting the tip of his tongue and directly bursting out the mystery of burning power. He successively chopped 999 swords to resist this sword. Rumble tilde. Suddenly, a blast of noise came, blasting huge pits in the first city, raising huge smoke and dust. Alas, under the rules of the ancient road in the sky, these giant pits soon returned to their original state. Finally, the smoke gradually dispersed. Mu Chongshan shed his hair. The wolf was trembling to the extreme, panting with a big mouth, and no longer calm before. Jian Wushuang saw this, and could not help but make a long "Is it just that?" Jian Wushuang secretly whispered in his heart, and suddenly came to understand. I'm afraid he overestimated this Mu Chongshan. Before stepping into the Shinkong ancient road, whether it was the Supreme of Bloodwave or the King of 9 Calamities, the thought he instilled in him was that the people in the Shinkong ancient road were very strong. This also led, sword unparalleled into the sky after the ancient road has maintained his cautious attitude. This made him, when he met Mu Chong, the king subconsciously overestimated the strength of the opponent. Withdrawing his thoughts, Jian Wushuang Chaomu Mu Chongshan arched his hand, and said lightly, "Leave." Herd Chong gods, animal husbandry, paying lip service to help twitched. He is arrogant, but he is not a narrow-minded person, he can feel it. Jian Wushuang closed his hand at the last moment, otherwise, he would never be able to stand here unscathed. Thank you for your close hand. Took a deep breath, animal husbandry and worship gods convinced road. Sword warriors nodded and continued walking toward the city first. And many more. At this point, animal husbandry worship gods suddenly shouted to him. Sword warriors go back and look at some puzzled expression, animal husbandry, to worship gods. Shuejian Excellency, your strength should not be our first city, behind the city, should be the place you go to hegemony, therefore, Shuejian sir, you might as well go directly to the second city is. Chong gods, animal husbandry, Gongsheng said. Sword unparalleled showing off his strength, natural, animal husbandry worship gods before they can no longer with the attitude to deal with the sword unparalleled. Strong respect, where it is the last word. Chapter 42:11. The first is more. Oh! Wu Jianshou raised his eyebrows, and after a moment of groaning, he smiled and said, "Don't you want me to challenge the bone dominate?" "Yes." Mu Chongshan nodded and said sincerely, "Blood sword, you don't know, the Bone Lord dominates the person who is not our first city, but a big man in the city behind, deliberately put him in the first. It's just a city, the strength is far above us. If you go to the epiphysial master, if you lose, but it is nothing, if you win, you will automatically drive the position of the epiphysis to dominate the urban master. At that time, the big man behind the bone will inevitably remember to hate you." The words said by the Mu Chong came from the lungs, and he said these because Jian Wushuang had just fought with him at the last moment, and he gave up his life. Wu Jianshou raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Is this bone paw dominated, is it strong?" Shimu Chong Shenjun replied, "Much stronger than me." Wu Jianshuang heard the words and smiled, but did not reply, but reached out, patted the shoulder of Mu Chong Shenjun, and strode towards the first city and the last temple. "This time when I came to Shinkong Ancient Road, Jian Wushuang's mentality was aimed at fighting against the strong one. How could Mu Chongshen's words make him retreat? In the deepest part of the first city, a huge and magnificent palace is towering. This temple is much larger than other temples, and when viewed from a distance, it makes people feel a sense of surrender. It is emblazoned above the temple with the huge word Bone, which is where the number one Bone dominates. Bone Lord dominates. I hope it won't disappoint me." Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, then raised his head and looked at the huge hall. A light flashed in his eyes. The next moment, Jian Wushuang strode toward this huge temple. Behind him, those who were defeated by Jian Wushuang looked at each other one after another, then followed behind Jian Wushuang, a dark piece, walking towards the front. Seeing this, Mu Chongshan bit his teeth and stepped into the flow of people. At the same time, on a stone tablet outside the first city, the 4 characters of Mu Chong that dominated at that moment were flashed by the golden light and disappeared immediately. Instead, it is the word Blood Sword. First city, second place, Blood Sword. Second place. Blood Sword is second. Isn't even Mu Chong the master, the opponent of the Blood Sword? Blood Sword, about to reach the top of the first city. At this moment, countless people uproared outside the gate of the first city. Mu Chong dominates the second place in the first city, and has never wavered. For almost 10,000 years, no one has been his opponent, and it is the Tianjiao who is said to have the most potential in the first city. However, today, this Tianjiao was defeated by a younger, dominated by only the 5th level master. This is a rise of Tianjiao. I dare to be sure, among the seats in the last 8 cities, there must be a seat in the Blood Sword in the future. Although the Blood Sword is modified to only the 5th level, but his combat power, in my opinion, even the strongest among the top masters, even the ultimate masters that are almost invincible, will not fall behind. If the Blood Sword ultimately dominates the realm, I am afraid that they can fight against those top Avilders in the universe, right? At this moment, countless people looked at the stone monument with the glittering word Blood Sword, enthusiastic and fascinated by it. In just one day, they watched Jian Wushuang openly, from the last one step at a time, to the second place in today's first city. They have seen many people who successfully break through the first city and enter the second city, but like Jian Wushuang, starting from the last one, they have been challenging all the way to the second. They have not seen it for a while. Dominate the repair with the 5th level, this step is unprecedented. Big Husband is like this. The ultimate master side. You said, will the Blood Sword continue to challenge the Skeletal Master to complete the Grand Slam of the first city? Or will it pass the Skeletal Master and go directly to the second city? In my opinion, relying on the character of the Blood Sword, I am afraid that I will choose to climb to the first city. You must know, what kind of feat is it to climb to the first city with a 5th-ranked series? It's hard to say that Bone Masters were not the people in our first city from the beginning. They were just big men in the last 8 cities. They were specially placed in the first city. Their strength was far greater than the people in our first city. It's a long way off. If the Blood Sword meets him, even if he can win, he's afraid it won't be easy, and it will affect the way behind. Yeah, although I really want to see the blood sword reach the first city, but from the perspective of my heart, I hope that the blood sword can avoid the of the epiphyseal. Otherwise, if it is in the first city and the epiphysis is dominated, if the blood sword wears out too much, it will undoubtedly be very bad for the next few cities. Yes, the blood sword is destined to belong to the last few cities, and you should not waste too much energy time in the first city. At this moment, countless people are looking forward to, and a little worried, looking at the blood sword ranking on the stele. What they don't know is that at the moment in the first city, Jian Wushuang has already reached the main capital of the first city. This temple is more magnificent than other temples. It is full of scarlet lanterns, and looks a little dark in the desolate and gloomy first city. WWW Blood Sword came to teach. Jian Wushuang thinned, Yu Shu stood up, gently took off the wooden sign hanging on the city's main house, and said lightly, "It is good." A hoarse voice came out from the city's main mansion. Creak tilde creak. Soon afterwards, I saw the gate of the city's main government slowly opening, making a stale old sound. Walking in the endless darkness in the city's mansion, an old man with a skinny blood robe holding his waist, stepped out of the city's mansion step by step. There was a cold breath, and then it emanated from him. Bone Puppet Master, Bone Blast Lord. The ultimate masters behind Wu Jianhua's twins had their eyes fixed. The zygomatic bone dominates. In the first city, it is definitely a nightmare. There are almost no city breakers who will challenge the zygomatic dominate. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and the bone dominated looked much stronger than those he had met before. A cold wind blew through, blowing on the blood robes of the main body of the epiphyseal body, exposing the dry, dark skin, and his voice was hoarse and said, "Right sword, right? The old man knows you. You killed the old man at the entrance of Shinkong Ancient Road. Your two masters." Wu Jianshou heard the words, but did not mean to deny it, nodded slightly and said, "Yes." Chapter 42:12. Second more. This is not a big deal. It seems that the old man will not embarrass you if you have a good talent. Unfortunately, if I read correctly, Blood Sword, are you from the Temple of Life? The epiphysis dominated the low road. Wu Jianshuang heard the words, and his pupils contracted for a while. The Temple of Life is different from other top forces in the universe. It is more like a big family, bringing together the special creatures that are wandering in the universe. These special creatures do not have exactly the same clothing and the same practice methods. Everyone has a unique way of practicing, which is completely different from the top forces such as the immortal kingdom of God or the ancient holy place. Therefore, people who come out of the Temple of Life are rarely recognized as coming from. After Wu Jianshuang stepped into the starry sky, he did not show a special atmosphere of souls. He was in control of nearly 1,000 powerful people. Among them were many knowledgeable people, but none of them recognized his identity. People who can quickly recognize me as a shrine of life, am just afraid of the whole universe, and only people in Daewu Temple. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and faintly replied, "How is it? How is it not, if it isn't, the old man wouldn't mind making a good destiny with someone like you who has good talents." The Bone Master dominated here, and the words came to a halt. Next moment, there was a sudden burst of yin and yin on his skinny face. "If you are from the Temple of Life, then I am sorry, today you will die in this first city. Blood Sword, don't think of sophistry. The old man is a disciple under the Black Eagle Supreme Seat of Daewu Temple, and there is no possibility to read it wrong. Old man, today, I will kill the future confidant for Daewu Temple. Go to hell." Boom. He did not wait for Jian Wushuang to speak. He stepped on his foot, 5 thin fingers, carrying infinite coldness, and took a hard shot towards Jian Wushuang. "Daewu Temple? Black Hawk Supreme?" Wu Jianwushuang heard the words, and there was a flash of intense killing in his eyes. "Daewu Shrine. Black Hawk Extreme. He can't be more familiar." At that time, he was faced with life and death in the Joey Starfield. The Black Eagle Supreme of the Daewu Temple recognized him as a special creature, and wanted to take the opportunity to kill him. To rescue him, I'm afraid he is now dead in the hands of the Supreme Black Hawk. He will never forget this life and death. I watched the scourge dominated by the storm. Genwu's eyes were extremely cold, and he sneered, "You have made a mistake." "Heh." The guilty Bone Lord who heard the ransack heard Wen Yang's footsteps, and a touch of ridicule appeared on his face, teasing, "What did the old man say wrong?" Qi Jian Wushuang raised his head, his eyes slowly condensed on the face dominated by the epiphysis. Next moment, a low laughter sounded. "You don't understand, it's not my blood sword, but you that are going to die today." Boom. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang held the Wu weapon sword, and severely chopped it to the Bone Master. The power generated by this sword is far more than the one that defeated Mu Chongshan before. A terror of mighty power erupted, stirring up the surrounding air, and the white waves turned upside down. Howling, howling, howling. At this moment, a sound similar to the cry of the demon and the voice of the Buddha groaning came from the Wu weeping sword. Finally, the Wu crying Excalibur with no hands in the sword and the bone claw dominated the palm like a dry claw, collided fiercely. A huge shock wave exploded immediately from the intersection between the two, and the land around it was 10 inches flat. No. Rewind. The aftermath of the fight between these two men is terrifying. Immediately, some of the ultimate masters watching the battle behind Jian Wushuang retreated back one after another. Jian Mu Chong Shenjun was shocked in his heart. He thought that Jian Wushuang, even though it was strong, was not much stronger than him, but after seeing Jian Wushuang, he suddenly understood in his heart. The gap between Jian Wushuang and him is completely an insurmountable nature gap. Rumble. Wu Yubor gradually dissipated, everyone quickly looked up, and saw a thin figure, suddenly shot backwards, hit the ground severely. That figure is really the master of the bones. Qi Jian Wushuang stood in place, with black hair flying all over his eyes, and his eyes flashed to the extreme. "On this soft power, who can you kill?" Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were cold, his chin was raised, and he looked down at the skeletal dome that was falling far away. Keik. The cheekbones dominated and climbed from the ground, looking hard at Jian Wushuang. His face was extremely furious. "This son obviously dominates the 5th level, how can it be so powerful?" "Blood sword, you." I waited for him to stand up completely. Qi Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. Once again, the sword was cut, and the sharp and icy sword awns directly crushed the epiphysis. Bone, who gives you confidence and dare to say kill me?" A deep sword mark suddenly appeared on the body dominated by the cheekbones. He raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang stubbornly. Taiching said, "Blood sword, who are you?" News about the Temple of Life. The Bone Lord dominates the person of Daewu Temple, and is also a personal disciple under the seat of Supreme Shadow, and naturally understands a lot. According to his understanding, the Palace of Life is in the level of dominance, and there are not many strong ones. He can really take the shots. He thinks that he can defeat him. Yi Ku. The man in front of him is totally different from the description of King Jiuyao. "Who will this person be?" "Kill you, you can't take the king of the 9 robbers," Jian Wushuang said lightly. The cheekbones dominated Wen Yang, and his face suddenly became cloudy. Blood sword www.mtl Novelle. "Do you think you really have a good chance of winning?" The Bone Lord took a deep breath and said suddenly, "Show your strongest strength directly." Jian Wushuang heard that there was no surprise on his face. Which is capable of running through the universe and reaching the level of ultimate dominance. Which one has few tricks to suppress the bottom of the box? "Good, blood sword, this is what you said, I hope you don't regret it." The cheekbones dominated his tongue and licked his chapped lips, with a cruel light in his eyes. The next moment, he reached out his hand tremblingly, and slowly concluded, "Forbidden, bone demon." Boom. Suddenly, the bone marrow dominated the already dry body, as if the last drop of blood had been drained, and the blood color began to fade away quickly. The vast divine power in him began to burn at a horrible speed. There was a crack in his back. There are more and more cracks in his body. More and more. Immediately afterwards, a shocking scene took place. I saw a sharp, black bone spur that pierced him. In just a few short breaths, the leader of the epiphysis changed from a dried-up old man to a monster with a spur full of bones bent over his body. Chapter 42:13. The first is more. This is. Bone Demon, no, Bloodsword is dangerous. For a moment, those ultimate masters behind Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Oh! Wu Jianshou raised his eyebrows, and there was a touch of wonder in his eyes. He could feel that after using the forbidden technique, the Bone Lord had turned his breath more than a few times. This is a good move, Jian Wushuang said lightly. Bloodsword, look now, Hu Thi is going to die. A wave of terror, like gold and iron rubbing, unlike human beings, emanated from the mouth of the epiphysis. The next moment, he stepped on his foot, and the whole person disappeared instantly. He could only see where he stood before, and a huge sound boom came out. Immediately afterwards, he appeared instantly above Jianshou's sword, 5 fingers turned into sharp bone spurs, and he grabbed at Jianshou severely. This grab is many times stronger than before, just like the 5 black piercing tears in the sky, grabbing towards Jian Wushuang's head fiercely. Wu Jian's eyes were cold, and he hacked out a sword to block it. Suddenly, the skeletal master grabbed 5 fingers and grabbed on Wu Weapon's Excalibur, immediately sparking a long series of sparks. Wu Jianshou snorted coldly, turned over with his right hand, and the divine power broke out in his hand, and he severed and flew the bones. Bloodsword, useless, you can't kill me. The cheekbone lord dominated with a wild laugh, but it was a flip on the ground, stood up from the ground unscathed, and killed the sword again. I saw that bone dominated the place where Jian Wushuang split and flew, leaving only a shallow white mark. I want to know that although the sword Wushuang did not really use up his magic power, the sword Wushuang's Wu-crying Excalibur has the ultimate power of the law. Bloodsword, do you think the greatest improvement of the old man after using this forbidden skill is the divine power? Cheekbone's master Zhong Kuang laughed and said to himself, you are wrong. The oldest promotion of the husband is that unbeatable defense. The cheekbones dominated and laughed confidently. He believed that no one could kill him except the ultimate masters in the universe. Is it? Ji Jian asked without a double-sided expressionless face. After using the banned technique, this bone cricket master is indeed very difficult to deal with. If he is still the 4th rank master and does not need those killing tricks, it is estimated that it will really be immortal at 130. But now, after breaking through the 5th level domination, the sword's unparalleled strength is enhanced, not just a little bit. From beginning to end, the magical power used by Jian Wushuang is less than 2 Chengdu, not to mention his 3rd most successful source of kendo, the laws of the universe that reach the peak, and the many killing moves that are enough to kill the invincible ultimate master. You must know that those killing moves are the source of Jian Wushuang's rule over the world. Bloodsword, now I am invincible. The cheekbones dominated his head, shouting with laughter, his voice turned into waves of horror, and some weaker ultimate masters hurried back. In his opinion, today's sword Wushuang has run out of means, Chen donkey skills are poor. Invincible? You are still really blind and confident. Jian Wushuang's expression was light, his right hand was turned over, and Wu Wei's Excalibur was retracted. Abandoned the sword? Ha ha ha, Bloodsword, are you going to confess to losing? The skeletal master saw this, and the face was dark and skinny, with a sharp spur on his forehead, and there was an instant of pleasure. The next moment, he lowered his head sharply, his eyes flashing with murderous light. Bloodsword, now that you confess defeat, it's time for me. Spur, go. He screamed, and suddenly, all of his bone spurs were rotated and fired, like a javelin with a strong force, containing a terrifying divine power, and violently blasted towards the sword Wushuang. Magnificent, cover the sky. Unstoppable. Suddenly, those masters behind Jianhua's body suddenly couldn't help but take a breath and exclaimed. This bone spur, even each one has reached the level of inferiority. This bone spur, if it is a single one, may be nothing, but together at this moment is enough to kill the top ultimate master. The strength dominated by the epiphysis does not belong to the 1st city at all. I've heard before that the bone marrow dominated the 5th city. He was sent to the 1st city only because of the big man behind him. Now it seems that this rumor is not false. Hey, if it wasn't for this bone cricket master, relying on the strength of the bloodsword, it would be possible to crush anyone in the 1st city and reach the top. Unfortunately, The blood sword met a person who did not belong to the first city at all. Everyone was discussing quickly, while looking at Jian Wushuang. In their opinion, Jian Wushuang's practice of abandoning the sword is obviously to know that he can't break the defense dominated by the epiphysis, and is ready to admit defeat. In a gaze, Jian Wushuang's expression was calm, and he suddenly asked, "Do you know how to deal with a clamoring bug?" As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone in the room was filled with doubt. What does mean? I did not wait for them to speak, and saw Jian Wushuang's body, a strong and mysterious atmosphere of the extreme universe of law, burst out. They swear that in this life, they have never felt such a strong atmosphere of the law of the universe. That's. The sword had no expression on both sides, and continued to speak. The words are not finished yet. Under the blessing of the law of the universe, the sword unparalleled stepped out, and the whole person instantly turned into a residual image, which was like a ghost, and directly avoided the thousands of black bones, in a flash, appeared in front of the master of the epiphysis. The sword has no double-sided expression, and his right hand protrudes like lightning, grasping the throat to control the throat. With this grasp, the speed is extremely fast. Under the blessing of the laws of the universe, it is full of obscure and mysterious feelings. The bone crust dominates under this grasp, and it seems as if it is silly and cannot move at all. It's a bug, just pinch it. The next moment, Jian Wushuang's right hand grabbed the throat dominated by the epiphysis and lifted it up sharply. And Jian Wushuang's unfinished sentence only then came to an end. All of this is coming to an extreme, almost completed in the electric light flint. In an instant, the audience turned into a dead silence. Everyone was stunned. Tuck 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 tuck. The dark and thick bone spurs only then hit the place where Jian Wushuang stood before. This. How could this be? Blood sword, how strong is it? Countless people looked at each other, shocked in shock. They didn't expect that it was just an instant that the situation had changed dramatically. Chapter 42:14. The second is even more. Dominated by bones and bones, he was lifted up by the 5 fingers of Zhenshou Shuang, and only felt the 5 fingers of Zhenshou Shou, just like the 5 mountains of the world, holding his throat. No matter how he struggled and roared, he could not move at all. Why, how could it become stronger so much at once? The bone crest dominated the expression. Kill you, why should I use a sword? Wu Jianshu's expression was indifferent. Among the 5 fingers, the majestic divine power and the sharpened sharp sword that broke the sky broke out at the same time. Immediately, the skeletal body dominated the deities as if smashed hundreds of times by a sledgehammer, and they continued to tremble. A crack appeared on his dry, dark skin. He claimed to be invincible defense, was broken. Do not. Suddenly, Bone Master looked at the crack and suddenly shouted in horror. At this moment, he felt the threat of death for the first time. The sword of Wushan was left unheard of. Between the 5 fingers, the cold sword meant to be a snake swimming, and it was constantly bursting out in the body of the god of the bones. 1 crack, 2 cracks, 3 cracks. For a short time, the bone crust dominated the dry skin, and it was instantly covered with cracks like spider webs. His bearing point reached the limit at this moment. At last. Farewell to the world, rest assured, your master will come down with you shortly. Wu Jianshou grasped the neck of the bone crotch master, brought him up to himself, and whispered in his ear. Immediately, the sword had no magic power and sword in his hands, and it broke out again. Ka wipe. Suddenly, the epiphysis dominates the body of the god, and then in a loud noise, the epiphysis dominates the body violently. Shinkong Ancient Road, the first city, the first person to dominate the bones, die. The audience was dead. At this moment, everyone is holding their breath, looking at Jian Wushuang with a kind of awe of eyes. I reached the top. Everyone knows that from now on, the first city has changed. From now on, the blood sword will replace the bone lord and become the lord of the first city. The crowd was quiet for a few moments, and then they boiled. Blood sword lord. Blood sword lord. Blood sword city lord. Countless people yelled, their voices were enthusiastic. For a moment, the word blood sword was boiling against the sky, and the sound of terror was rising. Countless ultimate masters, staring wildly at the back of Jian Wushuang. Legend. For them, Jian Wushuang dominated the strength with the 5th rank. From the last person in the first city, he lost 999 opponents in a row, and finally the decisive action of slaying the Bone Master was a legend. And how lucky they are to witness the legend. In a frantic gaze, Jian Wushou stood with his hands on his back, his expression indifferent, as if he had done only a trivial matter. It's all gone. Wu Jianshou shook his head and went straight to the main city of the first city. There, the handwriting on the wooden sign engraved with the word disappeared and replaced with the word blood sword. Wu Jianshou hung a wooden sign, and in the awe of everyone's eyes, stepped into the main city hall step by step. At the same time, outside the gate of the first city, countless people are attentively watching the rankings on the stele, their eyes are afraid to blink. At this moment, there was no sound outside the city gate. Everyone was thinking to see if the blood sword could create a miracle. After a short while, the ranking on the stele flickered with golden light. Come here. Rankings are starting to change. Blood sword really challenged the skeletal master, but I don't know if he will challenge success. Countless people stared at it, the atmosphere did not dare to breathe. Finally, Jin Guang gradually disperse. First city, first place, blood sword. Boom tilde. Suddenly, the crowd was boiling. Number 1. Blood sword reached number 1 in number 1 city, miracle. Blood sword really defeated Bone Master. Ha 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 ha. I knew that the blood sword would defeat the bone sword. You still do NT believe it, and I was right, right? I just do NT know if the blood sword will continue to go on, or stay in the first city like the bone sword. Dominate among them. I am more and more determined now, that blood sword, in the ancient road of the sky, the future must be a big man like Tianlong, maybe it will also fight with the top Tianjiao in the universe. Countless people or exclaimed, or laughed and discussed. Suddenly, those in the Sanzhu alliance saw this scene, and immediately felt uncomfortable like eating a fly, and quietly backed away. At the moment, in the main city of the first city, Wu Jian sat cross-legged, sitting on a futon, with a strong regular atmosphere, like a sea of water rushing towards him. The farther the starry sky is, the farther back you go, the stronger the rules will be. Therefore, it also creates a stronger and stronger weaker scene. Wu Jianwu opened his eyes, and there was a flash of thought in his eyes. For him, whether it is the bone-dominated or not, or the first city, it is just an episode of him in the ancient road of Shinkong. His eyes have never been placed on the first city. Therefore, when other ultimate masters saw Jian Wushuang top the first, all kinds of excitement and enthusiasm, Jian Wushuang's own heart, but there is no slight wave. The strength of this first city is not worth mentioning, but I don't know what the strength will look like in the next city level. Yang Jian's eyes flickered for a while, and now his strength, if only relying on divine power, should be the ultimate dominating top level. And if you add the law of the universe and the power of Kendo, Jian Wushuang can easily kill the top ultimate master. For example, the bone dominated just now, and the strength is at the top level of the ultimate domination. If you add Kai Tian, Xing, talents and so on, etc., Jian Wushuang confident, you can kill the invincible ultimate master. The ultimate masters of this kind of invincibility, such as the Zhennan king and the 3 princes who were in the ruins of Tai Luo. At the beginning, the sword unparalleled means were exhausted, and Yongyi Yijian was the only way to slay these invincible ultimate masters, but after breaking through the 5th level domination, the sword was defeated, and Jian Wushuang was confident. The king of the south, the 3 princes, and others, even if they don't rely on Yongyi in Tai Luo Jian Dian, he can kill them. As for the use of such powerful magical powers as Yongyi, Jian Wushuang is confident, and he is truly invincible like Zhu Jiawang, and even the ultimate master with supreme combat power, he is confident that he can fight without defeat. What's more, if his strong heart urges Tai Luo divine sword, how powerful can it be? Jian Wushuang himself is also unknown. Time passed slowly. Jian Wushuang did not stay in the first city for a long time. After the exhausted spirit recovered, Jian Wushuang quietly left the first city and walked towards the second city. The first city is just an appetizer. The real strong people have already reached the depths of the ancient sky. After Jian Jianwusu looked back at the first city, took a deep breath, and without hesitation, left the first city in a big step. Chapter 42:15. The first is more. While Jian Wushuang became the first city master. The eighth city, inside a magnificent palace. A few candles were inserted in the hall of the temple, and the dim candle light swayed, which illuminated the hall very gloomily. A demon youth wearing mopping robes and black hair scattered casually, sitting on a large chair with a relaxed attitude. Beneath him, the two top ultimate masters, bending and trembling, were kneeling at his feet like servants. "Master, the guy with the bones is dead." The servant on the left said cautiously. "Oh, who killed?" The demon youth raised an eyebrow. "Master, this blacklight mirror records the scene when the skeletal guy was killed." The servant lowered his head, moved his knees, carefully handed in a blacklight mirror, and said, "Okay." The demon youth nodded his head, took the Shuangguang mirror, looked down, and saw what was playing in it. He was dominated by the skeleton, and was pinched to death by Jian Wushuang. After a while, the evil young man's long fingers clipped at will, and the piece of mystic mirror was immediately torn apart. "It's really a waste, not even a fifth-level master is an opponent." The demon youth dismissed a cold hum and raised his head, his eyes flashing with thought. "This person is called a blood sword." Back tuck tuck tuck. Hitting his fingers, he beat on the armrest of the chair quite rhythmically. The two servants did not dare to breathe when they saw this. After a while, the young demon looked down at the two top ultimate masters kneeling in front of him, and said lightly, "You two, now go to the fifth city to intercept the blood sword. If you see a bring him back, you do have to come back, understand?" When the two servants heard the words, their hearts shuddered. "Yes, master." The two servants responded quickly, and then resigned with respect. After waiting for the two servants to leave, the eerie hall seemed even colder. The demon youth shook his head, leaned back against the big chair, and slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, in the distant temple of life, the mist was faint, a pot of warm spirit tea was burning on a stone table, the supreme of the blood wave and the great axe sat opposite each other, talking and laughing. "After the tea is boiled thoroughly. Huge axe, come and taste." But this tea was specially commissioned by the old man to remove it from the first tea tree in the universe. It has the effect of concentrating and refreshing the mind. Bloodwave Supreme rolled up his sleeves and poured tea while laughing rode. The giant axe Supreme heard the words and let go of his lips. He was not very interested in drinking tea, but only felt slowly and wasted time. Murmur. The giant axe lifts up the teacup, swallows jujube, and drinks a cup of tea buffalo directly into the belly. Seeing this, Zun Xiebua shook his head with a smile and shook his head, but he didn't care. He and Juxian had been friends for many years and knew his temperament. He held up the teacup, sipped the cup of Lingling tea, smiled and said, "Huge axe, have you been concerned about the news from Shinkong Ancient Road recently?" "What's the news?" Supreme Axe raised his eyebrows and asked. He Xuanxue heard the words, raised his palm with a smile, and said, 3 days ago, I received a message from a friend on the Shinkong Ancient Road, and a great event happened to King Jiujia. What's the big deal?" There was a cloud of doubt in the eyes of Supreme Axe. Could it be that King Nine Calamity had an accident? But looking at the appearance of blood waves, it doesn't look like something happened to King Jiujia. Zun Xuebua Supreme smiled slightly, and then said, "King of the Nine Calamities, killing Dingguang Supreme." "What? The King of Nine Kings killed the Dingguang Supreme?" The Great Axe heard a surprise. Lu Dingguang Supreme, he has heard that there is not much strength, it is the bottom of the Supreme realm, but that is also a real Supreme. It's extremely difficult to kill. A Supreme fall is an earth-shattering event for the entire universe. The King of Nine Calamities stepped into the Supreme realm shortly before, and was able to slay the Supreme Master of the same order. Is this news surely true? The giant axe slightly did not dare to channel. Zun Xiebua nodded his head and smiled. This thing has already spread on the Supreme Starry Road, and naturally there will be no falsehood. After a moment of pause, Bloodwave Supreme laughed bitterly, seeming to laugh at himself, but also reassuringly said, "The perfect level of souls is really extraordinary, thinking that when I first broke through the supreme realm, but closed only in the chaos era, can he completely control his transformed supreme deity. Ha ha ha, Bloodwave, we such supreme relying on asceticism, of course, it is impossible to compare them with those Qianjiao in terms of talent." Axe Supreme smiled heartily, and then the words turned and said, "This time, the King of Nine Calamities, it is very likely that they can go with us to the universal cosmic event." Shu Xiebua Supreme said and said, "As long as King Nine Calamity did not fall on the Supreme Star Road, the chance of attending the cosmic event of the universe should be great." After a pause, Bloodwave Supreme sighed, sighing, and looked up and said, "Count down the time. Jian Wushuang, the little guy, should have entered the ancient sky, but I don't know how he is. After all, when it comes to the degree of fierce danger, the competition in Shinkong Ancient Road is much bigger than that of Supreme Shinkong Ancient Road." "I know, you are worried about Jian Wushuang." Bloodwave Supreme smiled with a smile, and then continued, "Relax, Jian Wushuang's kid has always been clever, so we don't have to worry about it. It's also." Bloodwave Supreme smiled a little, and then said, "After the Nine Calamities beheaded and killed Dingguang Supreme, I look forward to more and more. What will Jian Wushuang look like after breaking through Supreme? I want to come, it should be similar to the King of Nine Calamities." The giant axe replied. Zun Shuebua Supreme heard the smile and shook his head without a reply. Only in his heart knows that the sword is unparalleled, but the special creature of super-perfect creature. If Jian Wushuang breaks through the Supreme, I am afraid that it will be more powerful than the current King of Nine Calamities, right? The years go by and the time goes by. Blinks his eyes, and time passes. I dominate the Shinkong Ancient Road, the fifth city, and the gate. The void suddenly twisted, and then, a young man in black and black robe, wearing a hood and carrying a mahogany sword box, stepped out of the void into the fifth city. Next to this young man, there was a chubby monk in a yellow robe. Bloodsword, this is the fifth city. The chubby monk in the yellow robe laughed. Okay. The dark-haired young man nodded, and looked around, seeing the bustling scene of this fifth city. Fangsha, restaurants, and everything. Many powerful men who ultimately dominate the realm, hurriedly rub shoulders on the street. Passed by. For this person, he is a sword unparalleled after a armor. Chapter 42:16. Second more. In the time of Yi Jiazi, Jian Wushuang broke through the four cities, reached the top in the four cities, and finally reached the fifth city. In terms of overall strength, the monks in the first four cities are indeed stronger than one city. Not much for Jian Wushuang, there is not much difference. The enemies encountered are often under a sword. The battle was solved, and occasionally when it was difficult to encounter, Jian Wushuang's note of Kaitian was cut, and no one could stop it. This monk, the chubby monk, named Hao Ember, was met by Jian Wushuang in the third city. At that time, the Hao Ember was facing the siege of many powerful men. This thing that shouldn't have been Guan Zhenshuang, but it was a coincidence that this group of people just blocked Jian Wushuang's way. Under the hands of Jian Wushuang, they killed all the strong ones, and the monk in yellow robe saw it. Immediately hugged Jian Wushuang's thigh, he refused to give up. Jian Wushuang saw this and took it with him. Is this the fifth city? The sword is unparalleled, and there is no surprise on his face. Starting from the second city, there is no limit on the number of stars and ancient roads. Therefore, it has also caused a lot of ultimate masters who cannot continue to move backwards, hoarding in one city. Case. Go in. Wu Zhenshou shook his head, converged, and walked towards the street step by step. Zun Hao Emperor quickly followed to follow, step by step behind Jian Wushuang. On the side of the road, many ultimate masters looked at Xiong Jian Wushuang. They first tapped, and then their eyes flickered continuously, as if they were thinking about something. Bloodsword, in this fifth city, the strongest person today is the Prince of the Yin and Yang. Hao Ember dominated in the eyes of those ultimate masters on the side of the road, appearing somewhat restrained and carefully introduced. Yin Yang Shenjun. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked at Hao Ember with great interest, and said, "Keep talking." Okay. Hao Emperor nodded his head and replied, Bloodsword, I don't know much about the yin and yang gods, but I heard that the yin and yang gods have a mysterious origin, unprecedented strength, originally not the fifth city people, but suddenly came deeper from the ancient road to the fifth city. After the advent of the fifth city, the yin and yang gods killed the original owner of the fifth city in only 3 ways and became the master of the fifth city now. I said here, how Emperor dominated for a while, seeming to remember something, and patted his head and said, yes, there is one more thing. I almost forgot to say that this yin and yang is not alone. Not alone? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, wondering, what do you mean? Yes, these yin and yang gods are yin and yang respectively. They are both the ultimate masters and the top-level strong men. The methods they practice are the same, and they have a high understanding of the power of the yin and yang. Together, it is said that even those near-invincible masters will feel tricky. How Emperor said eloquently. It's kind of interesting. Wu Zhenshuang replied casually, but his gaze looked elsewhere. He could feel that after he stepped into the fifth city, the people in the fifth city looked a little strangely at him. That feeling is like a wolf that has been hungry for a long time, and finally waits for a lamb at the door. Although the people in this fifth city tried to conceal the greed and cruelty in their eyes, Jian Wushuang had already seen too much of this kind of eyes and naturally saw them through at a glance. Wu Zhenshuang frowned, suppressed his thoughts, and continued to move forward. In a restaurant next to Miyu Road, by the window. Look, is that fifth-ranked master in black robes the one who is rewarded by Lord God? An ultimate master, his gaze was arbitrarily glanced on the royal road, but after seeing Jian Wushuang, he suddenly felt a shock and said quickly, Who? Is that Lord God, the one who rewards 1,000,000 universe sources? Suddenly, all the people in the restaurant quickly crowded over and looked at Jian Wushuang. The 5th level is repaired, the back sword box. Can't be wrong, this person must be the Lord God, the person who offers the reward. Go, hurry up and let the news of this person appear to inform Lord. Don't let others take the lead. They took a deep breath, suppressed their excitement, and hurried towards the city's main government. For a while, a conversation similar to that in a restaurant was staged around the fifth city. And Jian Wushuang still do not know that he has become the target of public criticism, but only subconsciously, the more frowns and tightened. This fifth city is weird. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He could see that as he continued to penetrate the fifth city, many ultimate masters on the roadside, after glancing at him, swept away towards the same place. Blood sword, they look at us with something wrong. At this time, the master of How Ember also found that the atmosphere was a bit wrong and swallowed. Did we provoke which big man? No, we have just entered the fifth city, and we haven't spoken to others. How can we provoke others? How Ember dominated a little doubt. Wu Zhenshuang heard the words, and suddenly seemed to remember something. His eyes narrowed. Provoked. If you say who he provokes, then there is only one person. That's the epicenter of the first city. At this moment, a sudden dull footsteps came from the earth. Alas! Immediately, Jian Wushuang saw a team of armed axe, wearing black armor, wearing a helmet with a white-skinned black armor guard, expressionless. Come towards him. They stood one step ahead of Jian Wushuang. One of the leading black armor guards first glanced at Jian Wushuang's face, and then took out a black light mirror from his waist, which seemed to be confirming his identity. Finally, the leading black armor guard retracted the Shuangguang mirror, and asked without expression, "Are you a blood sword?" "It's me." Jian Wushuang nodded calmly. "Blood sword, Lord God, please come with us." He Jiawei said blankly. As soon as the chanting voice fell, Jian Wushuang didn't say anything, but How Ember, who was behind Jian Wushuang, was a spirit and asked quickly, "This lord, dare to ask Lord God, what is it about us? Who are you?" The leading black armor looked up and down at How Ember, frowning, and said, "It's none of your business, just step back aside." Master How Ember also wanted to say that Jian Wushuang reached out his hand, preventing How Ember from speaking. He looked at the black armor slightly, and said calmly, "Take me." The black-armored man nodded when he saw this, and smiled lightly. "Let's go, Lord God, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Chapter 42:17. The first is more. Wu Jianshou followed behind the armor guard and walked away, but a sneer sneered in his heart. Well, I just hope that the yin and yang can be stronger. If a few swords are hacked to death, how boring. The fifth city is much wider than the previous cities. Jian Wushuang followed this team of black armor guards and walked for nearly 3 times, before walking to the main city where the yin and yang was. This city's main building is as tall as a city wall, with huge yin and yang pictures painted on the gates, full of meaning and strong rules. Bloodsword, we have just come to this fifth city, and have never dealt with the of yin and yang, you said. What did the of yin and yang look for us? How Emperor followed behind Jian Wu and swallowed. I don't know. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Although he speculated in his heart that this yin and yang should be dominated by the skeletal corpse that was killed by him, it was not known until he actually met. Bloodsword, I don't know why, I always have a bad feeling. How Emperor whispered. Oh, what's not a good hunch? Jian Wushuang heard it, and asked indifferently. I don't know how to tell you, but you also know that to me and other levels, there is more or less a sense of what is going to happen. I always feel that the yin and yang is uneasy to find us. How Ember said with a sigh, shaking his head. After he said that, his eyes murmured, and he said, Bloodsword. I think otherwise, let's run away before we enter the city's main house yet. Wu Jianshuang heard the words and smiled back. How Ember, you have concerns in my heart that I can understand, so you still don't want to go in. As for me, alas. Wu Jianwushuang reached out his hand and pressed it against the gate of yin and yang, pushing it away. He sneered. As for me, let's see what kind of ghost trick this yin and yang is playing. The heavy door was slowly opened. A beam of light shot through the crack in the door. Bloodsword, Lord Shenjun is waiting for you inside, please go in. The black armor guard stood in front of the door, stretched out his hand, and said blankly, please. At the same time, the team of black armor guards looming, cutting off the sword's back road. Wu Jianwushuang nodded his head and stepped into the main city hall. Seeing this, the master How Ember suddenly struggled and hesitated. I am now seeing by fools. The gods of yin and yang are absolutely conceived. I am afraid that it is easy to enter the city's main house, but it is difficult to come out. When seeing the figure of Jian Wushuang going further and further away, and soon to disappear in the city's mansion, the master How Ember finally bit his teeth and shouted, Bloodsword, wait for me. After saying this, he saw the black armor on both sides look cold and expressionless, exhaled deeply, ran out of his legs and ran towards Jian Wushuang. There are rockery pavilions and flying stone pavilions in the main city of Tancheng City, but it is a dead silence. In this dead silence atmosphere, it seems a bit depressed. Qi Jianwushu glanced at the dominated How Ember, raised his eyebrow and asked, How Ember, how did you keep up? The master of How Ember held his chest up. He replied with a smile, I can only save my life. If I retreat now, wouldn't it seem that I'm too outrageous? It's okay, God of Yin and Yang came to me, it's not your business at all. Jian Wushuang smiled, seeing How Emperor dominated with a firm expression, and stopped saying anything. After a while, the two passed through a corridor, and then a dark hall appeared before them. I saw 2 old men wearing yin and yang robes, sitting in the middle of the hall. Needless to say, these 2 old men are naturally yin and yang gods. The 2 old men exploded with red hair, red eyes, fiery fierce breath all over their bodies, and a few sparks scattered around their robes and horns. Another person was wearing a black robe, and his breath was as thick as water. Between his eyes, there was a faint blue sage flashing. These 2 men are like 2 servants kneeling at the foot of the demon youth in the 8th city. However, at this moment, the 2 servants are in the shape of a great change at the foot of the demon youth. They are sitting on the hall with contemptuous glances at the sword unparalleled. You are the blood sword? Yin Shenjun sitting on the right asked. It's me. Sword Wusho stood with his hands on his back, and he humbled and said, 2 gods, what's wrong with me? What are you looking for? You don't know for yourself. The Prince of the Yang was fierce, and he suddenly hummed when he heard it. Immediately, an overbearing and hot breath, as if forming a substance, came to oppress the sword Wushuang. The How Ember who stood behind Jian Wu's body saw the situation, and his heart sank immediately. This is to give blood sword a disappointment. Originally, he was still wondering if he could find a chance to be good. Now, looking at the appearance of this yin and yang god, he may not be good. Jian Wushuang saw this, and a slight sneer evoked in the corner of his mouth. Your Majesty? Huh. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's third primary source of sword intention broke out, and a sword intention that tore the heaven and earth suddenly rose into the sky. Once this sword came out, it directly crushed all the breath of the Yang Shenjun oppression, and then patted it towards the yin-yang Shenjun like the tide of the sea. Bold. Presumptuous. Suddenly, the yin and yang gods both stared at each other with anger on their faces. Huh. Finally, the ripping sword came crashing into the sky. Yin-yang Shenjun quickly drew up his divine power and reached out to spread the sword. Wu Jian saw this, and he didn't care about it. This sword was originally issued by him at random. He didn't even think about killing them. After patting the sword, the yin and yang gods looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes flashed to the extreme. Blood sword, the old man is too lazy to go around with you, I ask you, but you killed the Bone Lord. Yin-yang Shenjun looked cold and said at the same time. What? Blood sword killed the Bone Lord? As the man in the third city, he naturally experienced the first city. Therefore, he also knows the identity of the skeletal master. But in the back city, a big man deliberately planted in the first city. Suddenly, how Ember dominated. He looked up at the yin and yang god, fearing that the two men, who are also the big man, arranged to intercept the sword unparalleled. I killed it. Jian Wushuang stood on his back, faintly returned. He acted frankly throughout his life. He was dominated by the bone skeletal, he killed and killed, naturally he would not deny it. Okay, the old man likes you who are straightforward people, blood sword, not to mention that the old man doesn't give you a chance, you can decide for yourself now, we can do it in the province, and you can die easily. Yang said, his eyes flashed and he smiled coldly. Chapter 42:18. Second more. Self-determination? Wu Jianshuang heard the words, as if he had heard a funny joke, and couldn't help laughing loudly. Next moment, Qi Jian Wushuang smiled, and looked at the yin and yang gods, scornfully. What are you two, do you deserve to let me decide? The words came to an end, and the yin and yang gods were suddenly overshadowed. Stunning. Blood sword, you it! Shouted yin and yang. Then, with a wave of their hands, they yelled, black armor, kill me, rumble. Suddenly, they saw the two teams wearing the black helmets and holding the ultimate master of the long axe, taking a neat pace from outside the main hall and rushing quickly. Kill. Dull voice, from the black armor guard composed of these two teams dominated. When the two of the yin and yang gods saw this, the corners of their mouths suddenly aroused a smirk. Blood sword, we wanted to give you a chance to make your own decision. As a result, if you don't cherish it, you will blame us for being merciless. Blood sword, don't blame us. If you blame it, blame you for killing the waste in the bones and annoying our master. After speaking, the yin and yang closed his eyes and stopped looking. Everyone in this team of black armor is the ultimate dominator. For a total of 24 people, even if the two of them join forces, they will feel headaches. They don't think that Jian Wushuang can survive the strangulation of these two teams of black armor guards. Suddenly, the two teams of black armor leaped at the same time, the divine power gathered in the hands of the axe, fiercely chopped towards the sword unparalleled. 24 axe lights flicker, and the hall shines brightly. No. Blood sword retreats. Master How Ember's face changed greatly, and he shouted. Back. Wu Jianshou sneered, a flash of coldness flashed in his eyes. Native chicken tile dog. Huh. With the sound of a sword, Wu Wei's Excalibur came out instantly. I saw Jian Wushuang's right hand flipped, and the whole body's blood-stained Wu weapon sword suddenly appeared in Jian Wu's hands. Immediately after that, Jian Wushuang's sword crossed the sky, and the third strength power of Kendo's origin broke out. Huh. The 24 white axe lights suddenly split on the Wu weapon sword, and 24 loud sounds broke out. Wu Jianshuang only felt a sink in his hands. The 24 black-armored guards' joint hit was really extraordinary. Even if he now relies on divine power, he feels a little hard. Is this the strength of Fifth City? Yang Jian's eyes flickered. The Fifth City was indeed much stronger than the previous cities. Even if it was just the strength of a black armored guard, it could be called the top 100. Unfortunately, if this strength wants to kill me, that's not enough. The next moment, Jian Wushuang sneered, and more than 12,000 times his power suddenly burst out, and he picked up fiercely. Ka rub. A flash of sword light flashed. Suddenly, the 24 black-armored guards Chichi retreated backwards, and the body of the shook wildly. There was a crack in the black axe. Kill. 24 black armor guards looked at each other, and the faces covered by the helmet showed only a pair of eyes, flashing the color of determination. 24 Heijia Wei, once again killing swordsman. Blood sword, I'll help you. Seeing this, the master of How Ember suddenly bit his teeth and a long knife appeared in his hand, killing the 24 Heijia Wei. However, How Ember can't control the strength of the third city. How can he be the opponent of this black armor? He was only swept away by that axe, but he was blocked for 3 breaths, and he was forced to retreat by an axe. Jian Wushuang saw this and shook his head with a smile. Immediately, Jian was eyes twisted, looking at the black leap guard that leaped at him at the same time, and his eyebrows gradually cooled. Endless, ISNT it. Next moment, Wu Jian's fingers crossed the blade of Wu Weapon's Excalibur, and he whispered, "Open heaven." Suddenly, the Wu crying sword in his hand heard the cry of God and demon, and the Buddha groaned. A sharp Fengrui reached the extreme Jianmeng, condensed on the Wu Weapon sword. A wave of mighty power destroyed the sky, and it radiated from the blade. Cut. Wu Jianshuang twisted his eyebrows, lifted his right hand holding Wu Weapon sword, and then chopped down fiercely towards the 24 Heijia Wei. Rumble tilde. With a bang, this Jian Mang was chopped on the 24 black armor guard. At this moment, the sword power of the sword is more than 12,000 times, and the third strength kendo original power is no longer half-pressed, and all are up. I saw that as the natural disaster of the end came, the whole hall was torn apart instantly, and the thick eaves were lifted directly, raising countless dust. Suddenly, the 24 black armor guards were smash. First, the black axe in their hands, crushed inch by the sword, and then saw the treasure armor of the 24 black armor guards, blasting a crack, and finally during the explosion, the armored company took them 24 people, all turning into powder. I slaughter 24 ultimate masters with one sword. Beneath this sword, 24 Heijia Wei died, none of them survived. Hit this sword, the whole city is a sensation. Fifth City, whether it was pacing on the Imperial Road, or retreating in secret, at this moment, all looked up and looked at the location of the city's main government. What happened? Hurry up, there are battle fluctuations in the main city. Who fights in the city's mansion? Is someone going to challenge the yin and yang god? This person is so good at kendo. For a while countless people moved by the wind, striding towards the city's main mansion. In the main city of Tancheng, Rao made it protected by the rules of the ancient road in the sky, but also turned into a ruin. Countless fumes filled the sky, and in a piece of wall debris, Jian Wushuang's black hair flew up, holding the sword's combat power. Behind him, How Ember dominated his and slumped on the ground, frightened by Jian Wushuang's sword. My life-saving benefactor is too powerful, ISNT it. How Emperor dominated his tongue in shock. From beginning to end, he followed behind Jian Wushuang, and when Jian Wushuang defeated his enemies, he looked like a cloud of lightness, so he never thought about how strong Jian Wushuang would be. Where did I think that Jian Wushuang's shot was so shocking? Blood sword, we underestimated your strength. The bones died in your hands, and it is not wrong to die. A breeze blew past, taking away the dust. The duo Yin-Yang and Shenzhen's faces were extremely gloomy, and they said. Originally, the demon youth ordered them to come and kill Jian Wushuang. They only thought it was a beautiful errand. It was the main thing to come out and relax. It was only incidental. However, the sword that was unparalleled by the sword just made them understand. This blood sword is afraid that it is more difficult to deal with than its own imagination. Chapter 42:19. The first is more. There is so much nonsense. Qi Jianwushuang's expression was calm, and he looked at the yin and yang slightly. The next moment, the sword was swaying without a figure, killing the yin and yang god. Arrogant. The yin and yang gods looked at each other, then drank at the same time. Supernatural power, Yanlong. Supernatural power, miles of frost. In an instant, the area where Jian Wushuang was located first, the temperature plummeted, and the force of the icy cold to the extreme dropped, and numerous broken arms and ruins became ice sculptures. Under this icy cold power, all speeds have slowed down, and the sword unparalleled Wu Weeping Sword has thin frost. Also, this frost continued to extend upwards along the blade of Wu Weapon Sword, and seemed to freeze the sword Wushuang. Wu Jian's pupils shrunk slightly, and he could feel that under the power of this cold, his whole body of boiling spirits began to become slow and dull. And this doesn't stop. The magical power in the hand of Jaina Yang was stirred by his hands. Numerous divine powers condensed and turned into a huge dragon that can swallow the sun. Go with. Shunyang Shenjin's head was flying with red hair, and he pushed forward hard, and then, the huge Yanlong flowing with magma suddenly made a roar that shook 9 days and 10 places, and Zhong Yao's claws came towards the sword without biting. The two major killing moves issued by the god of yin and yang, and at the same time killing the swordsman. Even though it was Jian Wushuang, when he saw the two major killing moves, his face was a little dignified. After the yin and yang gods had done all of this, they suddenly carried their hands and looked at each other with a pride on their faces. Imagine that the two were the ultimate masters in the universe before being conquered by the demon youth, and they were the giants of the 8th city. They are confident. With their two hands together, it is not a problem to win a 5th rank in Sword Warriors. Howling. The magma dragon that was transformed by the savage divine power of the god of the sun was entangled in the sky, and a huge heat wave spewed out of its breath, burning the void. Above the earth, it was turned into a glacier of thousands of miles, and the land under the swordless feet was covered with frost. The broken walls and fragments were transformed into huge ice sculptures. The whole world seemed to be transformed into an ice and snow world. The primal power of the rule realized by the two princes of yin and yang, one extremely yin and one extremely yang. At the moment, they are working together to change the world, and the horror is extremely extreme. Wu Jian Wushuang held the Wu Weapon Sword and stepped into the void, as if sinking into the world of ice and fire. His expression became a little serious. It is indeed a strong man coming out of the back city, and it is much stronger than the master of the first 5 cities. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. This ancient starry sky is indeed the place where all the powerful dominators in the entire universe gather. The ultimate dominator in it is not only a great number, but also a quality higher than the outside world by several grades. If this yin and yang is placed outside, it is absolutely supreme, which is enough to dominate the existence of a party in the dominating realm. As a result, in this ancient sky, it has become a servant of others, and even the last 8 cities where the true strongman has not entered. Qi Jian Wushuang has long heard that Shinkong Ancient Road, 18 cities, and the 10th city as the watershed, the real strong, those who dominate the abnormal existence, Tianjiao evil, are fighting in the latter 8 cities. Converged his thoughts, Jian Wushuang faintly looked at the yin and yang gods, and said, "This yin and yang rule is good. If you grow up later, you may hit the threshold of thinking about the kingdom of God." The yin and yang gods stood with their hands in their hands. When they heard the words, they raised their eyelids and looked scornfully at Jian Wushuang. They said, "Blood sword, you have a little eyesight. Since you understand the strength of the husband and wife, please be good. Hold your hands and follow us to see the master. If you please the master, maybe the master is in a good mood and reads that you can be a slave and spare your life if your talent is acceptable." As soon as the words came to an end, Embark, who had long been stunned by the yin and yang gods, was dominated, and suddenly looked at Jian Wushuang with anticipation. He hoped that Jian Wushuang could trust the master behind this yin and yang god. Think about it, the yin and yang gods alone are so powerful, so how terrible are the masters behind them? The good birds choose wood and live, and the wise men choose the master. For the ancient road of the sky, It is a very normal thing for the weak to attach to the strong. After all, there are strong men everywhere in this ancient starry sky, and the killing is extremely cruel and brutal. If you can attach to a strong man, you will find yourself a strong backing. What's more, if the strong person that he is dependent on can fortunately stand out from the ancient sky and get the qualification to participate in the cosmopolitan event, then as a dependent person, he can naturally rise to the sky and go to the cosmos grand event. It can be said that, apart from those who are extremely confident in their own strength, or those who have stepped on the peak of the universe's dominance, other people, more or less, will choose the strong to attach. He is like, for example, the master of How Ember, is it equivalent to the sword attached to the sword? Finally, in the eyes expected by the master of How Ember, Jen Wushuang sighed suddenly and said, Yin Yang Shenjun, do you not want me to self-discipline, or you want me to be the slave of your master? You treat my blood sword as who is it? What kind of person? The yin and yang gods heard the words and laughed suddenly. Blood sword, is it because you don't understand the principle of the weak to surrender the strong? Smile Yin Yang Shenjun's face was cold and hummed coldly. Blood sword, don't know how to deal with it, this is the last chance given to you by your husband. In this life, you must understand and grasp the opportunity, otherwise the opportunity once you miss it, you won't come again, you know? Wu Zhenshuang heard the words, too lazy to say anything, and sneered, stupid. The sound of the words fell to the ground, the sword Wushuang did not hesitate again, and he stepped hard, and he would condense into the ice floor, step out of a large pit, and his body blasted out like a cannonball, looting towards the two gods, yin and yang. You ungrateful animal. The yin and yang gods snorted, Yang Long, go. Miles are frozen, up. Boom. Immediately, the magma Yanlong who was entangled in the sky at first opened his mouth and roared, spit out the breath of the giant Martian dragon, and then his tail flickered, biting towards the sword unparalleled. Wu Zhen's eyes were cold, and the majestic divine power was infused into the Wu weeping sword. The sword of Kai Tian was cut again, and he severely slashed at the magma Yanlong. Under Zhen Wushuang, the ice peaks as thick as the mountains stood up, with the power of cold terror, stabbed towards Zhen Wushuang's body severely. Get away. Wu Zhen's eyes rose sharply by 3 inches, and he sighed coldly, and his right foot stepped directly toward this ice peak. For a while, Zhen Wushuang defeated both yin and yang at the same time with one enemy and two. Chapter 42:20. Second more. I saw a weeping blood on the Wu weapon sword, and severely slashed on the head of the magma dragon. Rumble. A thunderous explosion exploded. Roar. I saw the Yanlong screaming in pain, and on its skull, a deep sword mark spread from the head to the tail, as if to cut this magma Yanlong in half. Beneath this sword, this magma dragon, condensed from divine power and the rules of yin and yang, shrunk by half, and countless divine powers were worn away. And the huge ice peak that came towards Zhen Wushuang was directly crushed by Zhen Wushuang's one step. Directly break the 2 major killing moves of the yin and yang gods. This boy. Seeing the yin and yang gods, the pupils suddenly shrank, and his face was a bit ugly. However, this scene also fell into the eyes of many Fifth City masters who were coming to watch the war from all directions. Their rushing footsteps suddenly stagnate, and their bodies startled. Actually, there really is someone fighting against Lord Shenjun. Isn't this person the one who was rewarded by Lord God? This person is so strong. Obviously only the 5th grade dominates the repair, but the two of them can fight at the same time without falling into the wind. They looked up at Zhen Wushuang one after another, their breathing was a little rapid. Yin and Yang Shenjun, you too have this strength, how confident are you? Can you say that you want me to arbitrarily? Dare to say that you want me to be a slave to you? Zhen Wushuang looked coldly, looking at the 2 men of yin and yang. The yin and yang gods heard the words, their faces were extremely gloomy, and they looked at each other. The fierce-tempered yang gods immediately said, Blood sword, you must be proud. After finishing speaking, Yin Shenjun's expression became dignified again. Yang Shenjun, don't keep your hands, be careful to capsize in the gutter. Although Shunyang Shenjun has a fierce temperament, he is not a brainless person. He nodded and heard Shenyang said, Yin Shenjun, Then use that trick directly to suppress this kid. Okay. Yin Shenjun nodded. Immediately, the atmosphere of the two gods, Yin and Yang, skyrocketed. The power of the two laws of Yin and Yang is rising, and they are constantly intertwined in the air, but they gradually merge together. The Yin and Yang rules realized by the two people are originally from the same root and complement each other. At this moment, they are fused together without any hindrance. I saw that after the two rules were merged together, it was gradually practiced and turned into a Yin and Yang pattern that swept the world. This Yin and Yang pattern covers the sky, and a horrible power, like the grinding disk that annihilates the sky and the earth, will shatter the air of nothingness. Oh! Jian Jianhua's eyes narrowed for a moment, and there was a strange color on his face. No wonder the Bone Lord dominates and the Yin and Yang are the servants of the big man in the back city, but the Bone Lord dominated and was directly inserted into the first city. The strength between the two is really too different. Blood sword, die. The next moment, the Yin and Yang gods burst into drink at the same time. Suddenly, this Yin and Yang array was pressed fiercely towards Jian Wushuang. The mighty might suppress the quartet. If placed outside, it would be enough to destroy a star directly. This is the trump card of Yin-Yang Shenjun. Yin-Yang Shenjun is indeed a strong man from the back city, is much stronger than us. For a moment, those fifth city strong men who came from all directions to watch the crowd shook their heads and marveled. Bloodsword, hold on. He was dominated by Hao Ember, and looked at this scene stubbornly. The atmosphere did not dare to pant, and a heart fell into his throat. In the void, Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and his black hair fluttered. He looked at the huge Yin and Yang pattern rolling towards him like a big sun, exhaling deeply, and spit out two words, cut star, huh. Suddenly, the turbulent wind in the air, the floating dust, everything, turned into the purest energy, rushing towards the sword without hands. Not only that, including those who dominate the distance, the weapons in their hands seemed to be pulled, and in their appalling eyes, they unconsciously converged towards the sword without hands. Magnificent, cover the sky. Finally, everything, all infused into the sword without hands, turns into a silver sword rainbow with a length of 100 feet. This sword began when Jian Wushuang first realized it in the first battle with Zhu Jiewang in the Life Shrine Proving Ground. After Jian Wushuang broke through the ultimate of the fifth, reached the level of Dacheng. This sword is enough to destroy the stars. This sword is enough to split the galaxy. The next moment, the sword held Baizhong Zhenhong without hands, black hair fluttered, and his eyes skyrocketed by 3 inches. Choose. Boom. Immediately, this silver sword rainbow split. When you hit this sword, the weather waves are split directly, and the heavens and the earth under the sword are split in half. Instantly, this 100-foot-long silver sword rainbow collided fiercely with the crushed Yin and Yang sword picture. Like a knife-cut tofu, on this Yin and Yang map, it was directly split into 500 feet. He is like a chaotic knight torn by lightning. This Yin and Yang sword is instantly shattered. Take this sword, destroy it, destroy everything. Domineering to the extreme. What? Suddenly, the Yin and Yang gods were trembling, and the anger in their eyes turned into fear. And the silver sword rainbow, after splitting the Yin and Yang array, just a slight meal, and then split again towards the Yin and Yang god. Escape. Yin and Yang gods see this, want to crack, turn your head and go away. Can you escape? Wu Jian's eyebrows are cold, and he holds the silver sword rainbow in his hand, as if the gods were born. Talent of supernatural powers, primitive universe. Qi Jian Wushuang said coldly. Suddenly, an intangible field came to the audience, and the distant footsteps of Yin and Yang Shenjun suddenly slowed down. And the silver sword rainbow, finally cut off. The thief is so daring. The old man's master is Qianxi Langjun. The Yin and Yang gods are horrified, the whole body is surging, want to resist. However, everything is useless in the face of absolute power. First of all is the violent Yang Shenjun. Under this sword, the body is covered with cracks like broken glass. Immediately afterwards, Yang Shenjun's body collapsed instantly, and countless divine powers were crushed under the silver sword rainbow into powder. Seeing this scene, the god of Yin Yin suddenly turned pale and pale. Boom. Immediately afterwards, the silver sword rainbow of Yang Shenjun was beheaded and killed again on Yin Shenjun. I saw that the body of Yin Shenjun began to disintegrate at a speed visible to the naked eye, and countless divine powers were worn away. This life is off. The yin sighed and gave up the struggle. I was just when my whole body was about to be completely crushed and my life was hanging. Suddenly, the silver sword rainbow suddenly dissipated. Chapter 42:21. The first is more. What's going on? Suddenly a sudden ecstasy of the goddess of yin, he thought that it was someone who had rescued him and saved his life. He quickly looked up. However, I saw Jian Wushuang faintly withdraw the Wu weapon sword in his hand and looked at him facelessly. Blood sword, what do you mean? Shun Yin Shenjun asked, but in his tone, there was less collision and provocation. Although he didn't know why Jian Wushuang had spared his life at the last moment, it was always fortunate to be able to pick up the next life in Jian Wush's hands, no matter what the reason. At this moment, where dare to provoke Jian Wushuang again? Jian Wushuang stepped in the void and stood with his hands indifferent. He said indifferently, "You, my life, I will stay for a while. You go back and tell the Tian snake Lang Jun behind you, wait for me obediently in the back. It won't be long before I will come in person." Jin Shenjun heard that his pupils suddenly shrank. "Blood sword, don't you really kill me?" Yin Shenjun said unbelievably. "Just let you live for a few days, give you a chance to be buried with your master." Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. Xuanin Shenjun heard the words, and immediately rejoiced. "Oh ha, blood sword, this is what you asked for. Okay, blood sword, let's go and see." Yin Shenjun dared not say more, for fear of saying something wrong, annoyed Jian Wushuang and made him change his mind. After I finished speaking, the yin god Jun turned around instantly, and howling away hurriedly away. Wu Jianshou shook his head indifferently. The yin god king was nothing but a cricket ant that could be destroyed. If he wanted to kill, he could do it at any time. He is the Tian snake Lang Jun behind him, who is Jian Wushuang who really wants to kill. Far away. Blood sword. Zun Hao Emperor dominated with excitement and trembling, looking at Jian Wushuang frantically. "I won. The blood sword won. That yin and yang is the old and ultimate master in the realm of dominance. When he was not conquered by the king of the snake, he was also the number one in the universe's dominion. Forgiveness is when the master of Hao Ember has not yet stepped into the ancient road of stars. I have heard the name of the of yin and yang, but these two people were defeated by the blood sword, and Yang Shenjun died directly. If it wasn't for the blood sword's final take-up, I am afraid that the god of yin and god will die here, and there will be no god of yin and yang in the world. Strong. Too strong. The strength of the blood sword is absolutely enough to compete with those top Tianjiao evils in the starry ancient road." Hao Ember dominated his eyes, and at this moment, he was completely convinced by the sword unparalleled, and he did it in his heart. It is planned that no matter what happens in the future on Shinkongulu, you must follow Jian Wushuang. This kind of powerful but peaceful backing is hard to come by forever. I must hold fast. In the void, Jian Wushuang lowered his head and smiled at the hostess of Hao Ember, and then stepped out of the air step by step in the awe of many fifth cities. At this moment, his whole body is converged, but he seems to be stepped on the ladder by every step. He is a simple black robe, and his breath is not only dominate the fifth series. Everyone present is higher than him. However, at this moment, everyone in the audience looked up at him without anyone, and they dared to have wanton faces. Alas! Wu Jian stepped on the ground with one step, glanced at Hao Emperor, and said lightly, "It's over, let's go." "Yes." The master of Hao rubbed his face quickly, and the exclamatory response was that he immediately rushed forward and followed behind Jian Wushuang step by step. The dark crowd crowded and saw Jian Wushuang coming, all in silence, and automatically separated a road for Jian Wushuang to walk. They have complex expressions. At first, they only acted as swordsman Wushan, the 1 million universe source stone rewarded by the Prince of Yin and Yang, a soft persimmon that can be kneaded at will. Therefore, when Jian Wushuang first stepped into the fifth city, the wanton greed in their eyes was too lazy to cover it up. However, in less than a day, the person they dismissed at first turned into an existence that made them hard to look at. Before that, the black armor guards who wanted to capture Jian Wushuang were also in the crowd. They guarded the main gate of the city and escaped, and were not killed by Jian Wushuang. At this moment, they are afraid of the extreme in their hearts. Fortunately, in the beginning, he was unparalleled to the sword. In addition to his indifferent attitude, there was no additional offense. In the crowd, the roads are continuously separated automatically, and the sword has no sides and no expression, and passes by them step by step. Among these people, there were those who secretly reported to the yin and yang gods when he first came to the fifth city, but at this moment, they all bowed their heads respectfully and did not dare to look directly at the sword. Finally, Jian Wushuang stepped on the steps of the gate of the fifth city. I walked through the gate of this passage, and behind it was the sixth city. Just when Jian Wushuang half stepped into the door of the passage. "Ill wait. Christine Bloodsword. Ill wait. Christine Bloodsword." Amongst the crowd, first a person yelled out a congratulatory speech, and then, more and more people shouted, "Ill wait, Kung Fu Lord Bloodsword." Finally, the word Master Bloodsword resounds through the fifth city and heads for the cloud. Stubborn, deserve respect. Wherever it is the reason it deserves. The sword Wushuang, relying on his own strength, has won the greatest respect. Amidst the sound of congratulations echoing through the sky, Jian Wushuang's footsteps did not stop, disappearing into the door of the passage. I watched the crowd watching the door of the channel without the swordless figure. Inexplicably, there was a kind of enlightenment in their hearts. From now on, this ancient road in the sky is afraid that it will become lively because of the blood sword. There are more people, but my heart is filled with emotion. Into the red dust last night, no one knows me. I am sky high now, I am the heavenly king. Alas! Through a dark channel, Jian Wushuang's vision in front of him suddenly brightened. The next moment, Jian Wushuang and how Ember dominated the two, appearing at the exit of the passage in the sixth city. Blood sword, this is the sixth city. The city can no longer be called here. The space inside it is much wider than the first 5 cities. We generally call it the sixth mysterious cave world. How Ember the master introduced beside him. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. His divine power induction was released outside the first time, but it was found that the vastness here was far beyond his induction range. His divine power enough to cover the stars could only cover a corner here. It is true that the city should no longer be called here, it is more appropriate to call it the cave world. Chapter 42-22. Second more. The 18 cities on this ancient starry sky can be said to be 18 small worlds. The more you go behind, the wider the area of this small world, and the stronger the regular atmosphere it contains. This cannot help but let Wu Shuangxin heart sigh, how powerful the adult is, in order to open up such an amazing ancient world of starry sky. Moreover, this is only just to dominate the ancient road to the sky. I am afraid that the supreme starry road is more vast and mysterious than here. It's unimaginable that such an insane means. Wu Jianshuang sighed in excitement. Some understand that the original Bloodwave Supreme told himself that if he did not enter the Supreme, he would not even have the qualifications to know the identity of the adult. This also makes Jian Wushuang look a little bit anticipatory. If he can really stand out in the ancient sky and get an invitation letter from the Universe Race event, then he will be able to see the adult at the Universe Race event. Jian Wushuang and how Emperor dominated the two and moved forward in the sixth secret world at random, perhaps because the area has become vast. The monks here are far less dense than the first 5 cities. It may take a long time to see a rushing dominator of the realm. After seeing Jian Wushuang, those who dominated the realm were astonished by their eyes, as if they had seen a rare treasure. It's strange that in this 6th city, you can still see the 5th grade master. After looking at Jian Wushuang for a few moments, those who dominate the realm left. Jian Wushuang's brow frowned, and he knew that his 5th level dominated cultivation was the 6th city that was gathered together in this top ultimate dominating powerhouse. The cultivation of the body is fluctuating. Under this secret method, if it is not the superpower who dominates the ultimate, he will never be able to see Jian Wushuang's cultivation. After Hun concealed his breath, both sides of the sword nodded with satisfaction. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang and Hao Emperor dominated while chatting, but they were not in a hurry. Master Bloodsword, I can't think of me ashamed, and there is a day when I can step into the sixth city. Dominated by Hao Ember, he watched the mountains receding quickly under his feet, feeling the strong regular atmosphere of the sixth city, and could not help expressing his voice. Once upon a time, he was only a small and insignificant character in the third city. Anyone could step on his head. If he had happened to pass Jian Wushuang at that time, I was afraid that his life would have been lost in the hands of others. Where can he think that he still has a day in the sixth city? However, the sixth city is just the beginning. Our pace is far more than the sixth city. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. Ha ha ha, Master Bloodsword, I don't hide it. When I saw you for the first time, I knew you would be a big man in the dragon and the phoenix and the ancient road in the sky. Hao Emperor laughed. Really? Jian Wushuang smiled at all. I was just chatting while they were walking forward. Suddenly, help! A clear cry exclaimed suddenly from a distance. Wu Jianshuang and Hao Emperor dominated the two, and both frowned. I saw a wonderful-looking woman in a purple dress, looking forward in horror. Behind this wonderful young woman, the five were burly, naked tops, and the ultimate masters surrounded by iron armor skirts, chasing behind with sneer on the front. Sister Joshi, stop here and give up the unnecessary struggle. Some of the five ultimate masters sneered. As the sentence fell, the distance between the two quickly narrowed. Suddenly, the woman in the purple dress, known as the Maiden of Nine Rays, flashed a struggle in her eyes, and looked around anxiously. Later, she noticed that Jian Wushuang and Hao Ember dominated in the distance. Suddenly, she bit her teeth, turned in a direction, and rushed towards the sword pair. 2. I am the contemporary saint of Joshi Holy Land, now chased by the wicked. I hope the two will be able to rescue each other, and I will be grateful in the future. Joshi screamed. Joshi Holy Land? Qi Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He had heard of the Joshi Holy Land, and it was also a big force in the universe, but his strength was not the best. He said it was a holy land, which was exaggerated. Master Bloodsword, should we rescue ourselves? Hao Ember asked beside him. Shoot and rescue? Why? Is it because she is the Maiden of Joshi? Jian Wushuang shook his head and said lightly. The various forces in this ancient starry sky are intricate. Although Jian Wushuang is not afraid, he doesn't want to let himself go to muddy water for nothing. After saying that, Jian Wushuang turned around and planned to move in another direction. Suddenly, the Sage of the Nine Dawns saw a flash of despair in her eyes. Suddenly, the five iron-armored men who closely followed the scene laughed and laughed. Boy, you know. Having said that, the five iron-armored men looked again at the Saint Nyoshi, and mocked, Sir Jushi, don't play a little clever and expect others to come to the rescue. I can tell you plainly, Mo said this sixth city is the people of the top 10 cities, and no one dares to come to your rescue. After all, you are the one who wants to be arrested. Saint Jushi heard the words. Zhao's body could not help but flash, her face quickly turned pale. Okay, I will go with you. Saint Joshi stopped and walked away. She knew that she couldn't escape. That's right, Madam Joshi, you must know that you can be seen by Lord Tianxi Langjun, but that's your blessing. How many people want King Tianxi Langjun to be spoiled, and Master Tianxi Langjun still look down on it? Mrs. Joshi, don't blame us, we are just helping Master Tian Snake Langjun. We have to count on you. After becoming a master of Tian Snake Langjun, we can be in Master Langjun. A few words before us. The five ultimate masters wearing iron armor said with a smile. He said, the five people stepped in front of the Maiden of Joshi, and they took her away, and many more. Just then, an indifferent voice suddenly came from a distance. Okay. The five ultimate masters looked at the sound of hearing, and suddenly squinted. Is that the kid? Isn't he gone? This vocal person is naturally the sword unparalleled. You said just now, Heavenly Snake Langjun? Jian Wushuang approached step by step and said blankly. Bold. How can you cry, Lord Tianxi Langjun's name? Immediately, among the five, an iron-armored man shouted loudly. Shut up. The leading man in the iron armor skirt waved his hand to stop the man from speaking, and looked at Jian Wushuang, and said in a deep voice, Sir, since you know who Master Tianxi Langjun is, you should also know, Lord Langjun never allows others to interfere in his work. Are you planning to get involved in Lord Langjun's affairs? Are you thinking about the consequences? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,